He was the cold-hearted son of a billionaire CEO who hated all women, until one day, he called the kitchen girl, Mom. What happened next would change not just his life, but his father's heart forever. You won't believe the twists in this emotional story. Stay till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching miracle stories that will leave you speechless. Story: 4,000 words, single paragraph, dramatic emotional tone with mystery and twists. Ethan Knight, the only son of the ruthless billionaire CEO Alexander Knight, was known for one thing: his hatred toward women. Since the death of his mother at a young age, Ethan had grown up cold, detached, and filled with rage toward every woman who dared to come near him, convinced that they were all gold diggers, liars, or weak-hearted manipulators who cared only for power. His father, Alexander, had raised him alone, a man hardened by business wars and heartbreaks, never once realizing how his emotional distance had turned his son into a broken soul. Their mansion, a palace of marble and glass, was filled with staff, drivers, maids, cooks, but none dared to speak beyond what was necessary. That changed when a new kitchen girl arrived one rainy morning, a quiet young woman named Lila. She was humble, shy, always lowering her gaze when spoken to, her hands always trembling slightly as she carried trays of food up the grand staircase. No one knew much about her except that she lived in the servant quarters behind the estate and worked double shifts to support her ailing mother in the countryside. Ethan, then 25 and recently appointed as the youngest executive director in his father's company, never spoke to her. He often scoffed whenever he saw her, believing she was like the others, there for the money. But one day, fate changed everything. It was a stormy evening when Ethan collapsed in his room after a severe anxiety attack. He had hidden his trauma for years, but that night it overwhelmed him. No one dared to enter his room, terrified of his temper, except Lila. Hearing his faint groans from the corridor, she rushed in without thinking. She found him struggling to breathe, drenched in sweat, eyes wide with panic. Without hesitation, she grabbed a paper bag, held his face gently, and whispered, "Breathe, slowly, you're safe." Her voice, calm and nurturing, echoed like a memory buried deep in Ethan's heart. He gasped, tears spilling down his face as he clung to her like a child. And then, in his delirious half-conscious state, he murmured a single word that shocked her: "Mom." From that moment, something in Ethan shifted. When he woke the next morning, embarrassed and furious, he tried to ignore what happened, but he couldn't forget her voice. For days, he found himself looking for her face in the kitchen, watching her hum softly as she cooked or carefully served meals with trembling hands. He didn't understand why her presence brought peace to his chaos, why her voice silenced the noise in his head. Alexander noticed this too. He had seen his son's anger fade slightly, his tone soften, his nights less restless. Curious, he secretly observed the kitchen girl and discovered that she often stayed late, writing letters at the corner table by candlelight. One night, he picked up a fallen page she had accidentally left behind, and froze. The letter was written to her late husband, a soldier who had died saving Alexander's company from a terrorist bombing years ago. The letter read, "I still see your face in every sunrise, and though our son never met you, I tell him stories every night before bed, hoping one day he'll feel your love through my words." Alexander's heart dropped. Her son. He ordered a background check, and what he found left him speechless. Lila's child had gone missing in a hospital fire 8 years ago, the same night Alexander's son, Ethan, had been rescued unconscious from that very hospital. His hands shook as he looked at the old photographs. The resemblance was undeniable. Lila's lost son was Ethan. The DNA records had been misplaced after the chaos, and Lila had never known that her son had survived. But Alexander didn't tell her. Not yet. He was terrified. Terrified that revealing the truth might destroy the fragile calm his son had found. Meanwhile, Ethan began visiting the kitchen daily, asking Lila odd questions about life, about mothers, about forgiveness. Sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, he'd watch her smile sadly at the rain or whisper prayers for someone unknown. Slowly, his hatred began to crumble. One afternoon, while helping her carry groceries, a car lost control and nearly hit them. Lila pushed Ethan out of the way, taking the hit herself. She was hospitalized with multiple fractures. As she lay unconscious, Ethan refused to leave her side, gripping her hand for days. One night, he broke down in front of his father, shouting, "Why does it hurt this much? Why do I feel like I'm losing something I've already lost before?" Alexander, unable to bear the guilt, finally confessed everything: the letter, the hospital fire, the DNA results. Ethan stood frozen, tears flooding his eyes, realization dawning that the woman he had called Mom, in his delirium, truly was his mother. The next morning, he sat by her bedside, holding her hand, whispering, "Mom, please, wake up. I'm sorry for hating you. I'm sorry for being blind." When Lila finally opened her eyes, she saw her little boy again, not as the broken man he'd become, but as the child she'd prayed for every night. The moment they embraced, the heart monitor beeped faster, nurses rushing in as tears poured down their faces. Alexander, watching from the door, broke down for the first time in decades. From that day, the mansion changed. Ethan no longer hated women. In fact, he started funding charities for single mothers and built an entire wing in his company called the Lila Foundation, dedicated to empowering women who had lost everything. Lila, though she insisted on continuing her work in the kitchen, became the emotional heart of the Knight household. But the story didn't end there. Months later, while sorting through old documents, Alexander discovered a shocking truth: Lila's husband had not died in the explosion. He had survived but lost his memory, living under a new name in a small coastal village, unaware of his past. With trembling hands, Alexander brought him home. When Lila saw him, her knees buckled. The man who once saved hundreds, now a fisherman with blank eyes, looked at her like a stranger. But when Ethan called out, "Dad," something clicked in the man's heart. He blinked, tears falling as flashes of memories returned: his son's first steps, Lila's laughter, the explosion, the pain, and the loss. He collapsed into their arms, whispering, "You found me." The entire family wept, reunited after years of pain, loss, and misunderstanding. Ethan took over his father's empire but ran it differently, with compassion, humanity, and heart. The cold mansion became a home filled with laughter, warmth, and music. Alexander, now retired, spent his mornings gardening with Lila, often saying, "I built an empire of money, but she built an empire of love." As for Ethan, he found love too, not in wealth or fame, but in a woman who reminded him of his mother's grace and strength, proving that love, no matter how broken, always finds its way home. Years later, as Lila sat watching her grandchild play in the garden, she whispered to Alexander, "It's funny, isn't it? I came here to serve, and found my family." Alexander smiled softly, replying, "No, Lila. You didn't find them. You healed them." And as the sun set over the Knight estate, one thing was clear. The boy who once hated all women had learned to love again, all because of one woman who never stopped believing that even the coldest hearts could be warmed by love.